Sparta was ruled by two kings, and the kings were considered priests of Zeus. Children were given basic mathematics and music education, and were raised more as warriors. It was important for women to exercise, so that they had a better chance of surviving childbirth and giving birth to strong children. In the 8th century BC, the vast population of Sparta now needed more fertile lands, so they decided to seize the fertile lands of their neighbors, the Messenians. The result was inevitably warned. The First Messenian War was fought between 700-680 or 690-670 BC. At the end of 20 years of war, the Messenians lost their freedom and became agricultural workers of the Spartans. From that moment on, those who were from Messenia were called Helots. These wars increased Sparta's territory to 8,500 kilometers and made it the largest city-state in Greece. In their early period, the Spartans seized the rich lands of their neighbors and forced them into laborers. The Helots always had the opportunity to rebel, and when the time came, they did. But despite the great population difference, the Spartans still won the fight. Military training in the Spartans. In Sparta, children were left by their mothers at the age of 7 and lived in barracks with other Spartan boys for the next 13 years. They were under constant surveillance. If the guard was to leave the group, he would give his authority to a citizen who happened to be there, and if any rules were broken, the children would be severely punished. This act made Spartan boys and boys respect their rulers above all else. Each individual served as a soldier until the age of 60. It was important to be structured. The citizenship rights of those who became fat or frail were restricted. State-controlled education in Sparta is called agoge, and the goal is not to instill literacy, but to instill fitness, obedience, and courage in young people. Boys would gain survival skills. This included stealing what they needed without getting caught and learning how to kill Helots. In order to eliminate the weaker ones, children who looked puny at birth were left at the foot of the mountain. Children were taught to live on inadequate food and clothing. After the age of 12, underwear was no longer allowed to be worn. Instead, they made do with a single piece of fabric all year. Spartan children were allowed to bathe or apply ointment to the wound for a few days a year, so that their bodies remained hard and dry. Young people who slept together used to pick reeds from the banks of the Eurotas River with their hands and make their own beds. When the reeds were broken, they would be sharp as a knife. When winter came, the devil's car, a dandelion-like plant, was sprinkled on the bed to keep it warm. In addition to barefoot races and wrestling, there were particularly brutal competitions in which two teams tried to kick each other off the island by pushing, kicking, biting, and gouging out their eyes. The youngsters were malnourished so that they would not be fat, which would drive them to steal. Therefore, all Spartans are soldiers who have been trained from the age of 7. The state undertakes the training, and the physical exercise carried out includes war dance, swimming, throwing, riding, and ball games. The young people were supervised by paidonomos, which means child shepherd. By the time a Spartan was 20 years old, he would join the army in social dining clubs known as syssitia. In order for a Spartan to have all the rights of citizenship, he had to be a Spartan by birth, educated, a member of the syssitia, and have reached the age of 30. There are 300 Spartans mentioned by Herodotus in written sources, who did not allow the army to pass through the narrow pass in the Thermopylae Pass for 7 days during the attacks of the Persian armies. It must have been a power that would not be manifested because they fought with the Persian army of 2,600,000 people. I wonder if such a war really took place. These people, who fought for 7 days in front of millions of troops, must have been very talented warriors. Yes, when the Spartans were only 10 years old, they were tested with all their vital strength to hunt and survive in nature. Those who couldn't hunt would be hunted, and those who couldn't fight would be tortured. Thus, when they grew up, they proved all their war tactics and skills through their war experiences. In fact, the only written journal in historical sources about army numbers is what Herodotus wrote. The armies numbering millions were later refuted when the world population of the period and historical sources were examined. In fact, 150 years after this incident, he was able to gather an army of 100,000 people while defending himself against the Persian king Alexander the Great. Moreover, around 1050 AD, the Crusader armies gathered from all over Europe numbered 300 or 350,000. In written sources from the ancient Greek period, the attacking Persian army is mentioned as numbering between 15 and 20,000. It is also mentioned that the military strength of the Spartans was 300 masters and 1,500 slaves fighting alongside them. While they were about to be defeated on the last day of the war, a total of around 3,500 Greek forces defended the passage.